and showtime. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. Look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. My name is Rich Freeman. I am executive editor of the ChannelPro Network, also a co-host of this program. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by your other co-host, Eric Simpson, a business transformation and improvement advisor to MSPs and other IT providers. Eric, how you doing?
Cold and rainy is how I'm doing, Rich. Back in SoCal after taking the last week off to do a little bit of skiing up in the Wasatch with the family. And I come back to more rain and more windstorms in Southern California. I thought we were done with that, a few weeks ago, but apparently we're still at it. How about you?
I had the exact same. I thought we were done with that thought because we had some snow this morning and yesterday morning as well here in Seattle. We're coming up on March. Really? That doesn't normally happen here.
Well, good for the ski resorts, I guess, and for the ski aficionados.
Well, then, let's dive into our top story, which is kind of two top stories rolled together. And the common thread here, Eric, is just going to be money that is maybe being left on the table by some of the folks in our audience. And basically, I'm drawing on some data. There were two different research reports that came out this week that just sort of grabbed my eye because they called attention to some opportunities people might not be taking advantage of. Let's start with the IBM Security X-Force Threat Intelligence Index 2023, the security report from IBM's X-Force team. A lot of really interesting data in it. One of the things they pointed out is that 21% of the attacks in the last year that they tracked were so-called backdoor attacks, which can be very difficult to detect, very difficult to deal with. In fact, you don't normally see a number that large on a report in terms of the scale of backdoor attacks because security software doesn't even know it happened. So they were able to detect 21% of attacks last year were involved backdoors, and 67% of those were failed ransomware attacks because the defender, the would-be victim, did detect and did respond. What's the moral of that story there? The reason so many of these businesses were suddenly aware of being the target of an attempted backdoor attack, and the reason 2/3 of those attacks failed is because the customer had EDR software. Think back, Eric, to something we talked about in an earlier episode. Datto's 2022 State of the MSP report says that 62% of MSPs currently offer what they called advanced endpoint security, which is not necessarily exclusive to EDR, but it certainly includes EDR. 62%, which means that there are an awful lot of MSPs out there who are not using EDR, even though we just saw documentation from IBM revealing it's a very, very effective defense. It's a way for you to add a layer to your stack, even if you're not going to charge more, although I would argue that you can make the case you should. You're going to still protect the bottom line because your customers are going to be less vulnerable. They're going to have fewer incidents. So that's item number one. Item number two comes to us from Adigy, which is a mobile device management RMM platform specifically for the Apple ecosystem, Macs and iOS, et cetera. They just published yesterday, actually, their 2023 State of the Apple Device Management Industry Report. They went out and talked to 480 MSPs. They found that the MSPs who manage Apple devices charge twice as much as the MSPs that don't, because there are skills required to handle those Apple devices. They don't work exactly the same way the Windows ones do. If you have those skills, that's something that you can charge for and people will pay for. Another interesting data point, 65% of the MSPs surveyed, this is inclusive of the ones who don't do Apple management right now, 65% said that they expect the use of Apple devices among their business customers to increase in the next 12 months. And then we found out that a substantial, and I didn't get the exact number from this press release, but a whole ton of MSPs aren't doing Mac management. And there are a number of reasons why. 30% of the people who are not doing it said Managing Mac OS devices is a pain. It's very difficult. 28.3%. I don't have an Apple expert on my team. These are real and legitimate barriers, and there is going to be some investment required to surmount those. But boy, there's an awful lot of additional recurring revenue out there for the companies that don't limit themselves just to the Windows devices. So here are two ways, two opportunities for people to think about to increase the top line and maybe the bottom line too.
Yeah, I was interested in some of those very statistics. You were rattling them off, Rich, because there's a lot of them in this report. Just so interesting that, it's almost like this undercurrent of Apple, continuing to gain market share into the business environment, and some of the reasons why the MSPs were saying like they don't support. It's like they're a pain in the butt. Well, come on, guys. There's tools and technology now that make supporting, these devices, as simple as supporting any other devices. Not having an Apple expert on their team, well, like anything, if you see a market opportunity, you're going to want to invest in what it takes to support that opportunity. And if more and more of your clients are using these devices, I would assume that, the biggest competitor to Apple, right? The Android device and things like that, there's an argument to be made that you should be supporting all of these mobile devices because they are becoming so much more critical to business today. Like everything is becoming an app. I know I use, my mobile devices more and more and more. When you look at the screen time and you go, holy cow. And, if I look at my screen time, let's say versus my kids' screen time, I know that my screen time is more about doing work and business where their screen time may not be so much so, not yet anyway. But it's very interesting to see this huge opportunity that apparently, not many MSPs are taking. And then the cherry on top is the fact that the MSPs that are taking advantage of this opportunity are charging twice as much as their competitors, which, hey, that's a call to arms as well. And
Absolutely.
then on the EDR front, yes, EDR is absolutely now a required service and solution that should be in every MSP stack. My goodness, if not, if only for the peace of mind and comfort it gives you, right, to have a service that's monitoring for this kind of stuff and not becoming reactive and things like that. Even if you haven't matured to the point where you have created, bundles of cybersecurity services and have priced them and all that, begin adding these services in there as you're developing that. Now, of course, Rich, we've talked about, my bundling and pricing philosophy many times on the program here, but you've got to begin protecting yourself as well as your clients because, your vulnerability is their vulnerability, just like the other way around, right? So some really good tips there. And, again, you're charging for these things. One of the, common themes that I hear working with partners, Rich, is, wow, all of these additional services and solutions I keep having to add to support my clients are just increasing my costs. Well, let me pivot then and say, yes, but it's also increasing your revenue and profit when you're having these conversations with your clients the way you should be and informing them that, if they want to remain your client, they have to subscribe to your minimum bundle of services because that's how you both continue to operate in today's, heavily threatened world, I guess.
So, check it out. It's not going to be perfect for everyone, at least on the Mac management side, but, refresh your security stack if you don't have EDR in there. At least take a look at refreshing your device management policies if you're not doing Apple devices today. And Eric, this is the segue to your tip of the week, which has to do with refreshing something else.
Thanks for that. Great segue, Rich. And we're talking about refreshing and upgrading your employee swag. And this may sound like, a weird, tip of the week out of, left field, Rich, but, the reality is that we as IT providers, as MSPs, as channel pros, we're struggling with that real challenge of the technology, workforce challenge where, there's this dearth of talent out there. And what is it that we're doing to make sure that we're keeping our existing talent? And we've talked again on this program about, different tips and strategies to try to keep your existing employees happy. And, just, in a particular engagement I'm working with right now, with a couple of clients, it became really, really important that they recognize and appreciate their employees in a unique and different way. And this involved my recommendation to say, hey, let's upgrade the swag and all of the gear that we're giving our employees. Just another additional little thank you, a little benefit to make them feel, loved and cared for and nursed. I mean, among all the other things, this is by no means a replacement for not doing all the other things that you should be doing to keep your staff happy, Rich, but it's just one of those additional efforts that goes beyond, oh, well, we have, you know, coffee cups and pens and things like that. I'm not talking about the stuff that you give your clients in a welcome kit. I'm talking about the stuff that you gear your team up, the good swag, Rich, the hoodies, the jackets, the backpacks, the logoed gear that also helps promote your organization out, when your techs are out working and when you're engaging with new prospects and the like. So it's just kind of another, checkbox to say, are we doing this as well to make sure that we're making our employees feel like they're part of the team, and they're representing us, and we're just outfitting them better and more prominently than, our competitors.
We always want to go after the low-hanging fruit first, right? And so, I mean, there are, like you said, there are more important things, the career advancement opportunities, the training, the compensation. There are a lot of other things you can do to retain employees, but this is a pretty easy, relatively obvious, not super expensive thing that will also show people, it will help your employees feel the love, basically, that you have for them. And it's kind of a culture reinforcer too, to have everybody in their branded hoodie in the office like that. It just sort of visibly demonstrates to them and everyone else that they're part of a team. So yeah, for anyone who hasn't thought about this in a long time, now's a good time to do that.
Right. And again, appropriate attire for appropriate, situation. So if we're going out and seeing clients, on a sales call or, in a more professional manner, we're going out and seeing clients, hey, then it's, the polo shirt with the branding, maybe the nice button-down shirt with the branding, if you're wearing ties and things like, there are things that we can do, right, depending upon the role of the technicians. But as we all know, there are a lot of technicians that are kind of locked in the knock, right? And that's where they are. They're sitting there, they're doing the cybersecurity stuff, they're doing that monitoring, and that response from the EDR alerts and things like that. And, get them to feel like they're part of the team too. If they have a different dress code, just make sure that we're giving them, that attention, that feeling like you're part of the family too. Here's your branded gear, what you're comfortable wearing, and what, the company's direction is about, attire and things like that. Just, in the best case scenario, I have a set of attire for, all different types of activities, from button down shirts to polos to hoodies to jackets, backpacks, etc., things like that.
It's a good idea. Give it some thought, folks. It leaves us with time for just one more story this week, and that story comes to us from India, specifically the city in India of Indore, where a small IT company, Soft Grid Computers, got into the news this week. And Eric, typically when we think about people at a company wanting to restore work-life balance, it's usually the employees wanting to do maybe a little less work, have a little more time for their life. This flips the script on that. Basically, the management team at SoftGrid has put some software in place such that at the end of an employee's shift, this message comes up on their screen that they can't get away from. I'll just read it to you here. It says, "Warning, your shift time is over. The office system will shut down in 10 minutes. Please go home." So the managers at this company basically are not only encouraging their employees to work less and restore work-life balance in that manner, they are enforcing it. They're taking command of the workstations. They're putting that message up. 10 minutes later, they shut everything down. You cannot work anymore. Go home. Interesting. I guess that's an interesting office culture there.
And you know what, Rich? I'll bet those employees are much more productive in the 8 hours they have every day because they know they've got to get it done within that allotted time. There's no more, oh, I'll just stay a little bit extra. I'll work on the weekend a little bit. So, I think it's a great idea if you can pull it off.
All right. Well, folks, that is all the time we've got for you this week on the 5-Minute Roundup. We're going to be back again next week with another episode for you. We are both a video and a podcast these days. So if you happen to be watching us on video, but you're into podcasts, go to wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. You're going to find us there. You can subscribe, you can rate, you can review. And if you do all three of those things, we would thank you very much. And so would your peers who can then discover the show more easily. If you are listening to the podcast, but you're interested in the video, go to YouTube, look for the ChannelPro channel there. Once again, you can subscribe to the show. If you click that little bell icon, you'll even get notified when the new episodes become available. You want to read more about information like these research studies we were talking about, you want to get all sorts of great business growth advice for your company, please visit channelpronetwork.com every day because we've got amazing new content for you going live there every day. And if you want to learn more about Eric and the work he does with his clients, you'll want to visit ericksimpson.com. That is ERICK Simpson.com. So once again, folks, we thank you very much for joining us. We're going to see you again next week. Until then, please enjoy the rest of your week. Eric and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.